Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is KidNate at BloodyElbow.com, joined once again by Zane Simon for the sixth round of UFC Fight Night 78, aka UFC Fight Night Monterrey, aka UFC Ultimate Fighter Latin America 2 finale, Magnum versus Gastelum. 8 straight decisions. Who needs Klonopin? This could put me to sleep forever.
I mean, I enjoyed everything from Cejudo on as far as fights went. But
yeah, those three were all one by one at a time. They were pretty good. I mean, and Gastelum had his big comeback in the fourth round, but wasn't quite enough to fend off Magny. One of the frustrations of the championship round format in MMA for me is that after 3 one-sided rounds, the fight's pretty well in hand, and the other guy's got to get a knockout. Takes a lot of the fun out of it, and it also rewards point fighting, which Magny is just a irredeemable point fighter to me.
I don't know. You're so tracked in on that, and I don't see it. I think he did a really fantastic job and took it to Gastelum, who's a lot tougher than he gets credit for.
That's true. It was a great performance by Neil Magny, and if it wasn't in the context of 8 straight decisions, it would have been a lot more enjoyable and impressive. But for me, the excitement was when Gastelum started dropping him. I mean, you know, when you eke your way out to 3 rounds ahead on points, and the other guy really is looking like he's going to finish, that's who I root for. I can't help it.
I know, but I mean, it's not Magny's fault that he doesn't have a ton of power and snap on his punches. Like, I don't think that.
No, I don't know what he could do about it, but it still just makes it less fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's too bad that by the time we got to those last 3 fights, there really was no momentum in the card at all.
None. It was far more interesting to watch. I didn't get to watch the fights, but I watched them on Twitter. It sounded like the Cotto Canelo undercard was really the fight of the night. So, you know, I don't know what the UFC was thinking putting on a fight card in Mexico when Canelo is fighting in Las Vegas. Just hubris to go right up against Mexico's favorite fighting son right now. But I have no idea what the ratings are going to be like.
I just think they had contracts to fill and a slot to fill them in. That's it. Like, it was just like, okay, put it out there. Doesn't matter. We did. I mean, they did Holm Rousey last weekend. I can't imagine they care at all what this fight card does for them.
It's true. And if you notice, Joe Rogan has the night off. Dana White has the night off. I mean, this is definitely the backup squad that was out in Monterrey. But you know, I don't know. Gastelum, the fight IQ drives me crazy. It's like the guy had him hurt on the feet and kept clinching, kept tying up, kept trying to grapple with him. Just not a high fight IQ guy, Gastelum.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he just, I don't know. It was too bad. I really did feel like all he needed was to keep it standing, and he would have knocked him out at the end there.
Yeah, and that would have totally redeemed everything. It would have made a much more fun card. And, you know, now he's lost 2 out of 3 fights. And, you know, losing to Tyron Woodley, who's a title contender, no shame in that. Neil Magny, not quite a title contender. No shame in losing Neil Magny, but I mean, if you're thinking to yourself like number 10 with a bullet like Gastelum was, you want to be breaking into that top 10, breaking into the top 5, going for a title. Losing to Neil Magny is a big detour in your career plans.
Yeah, it's true. This is a definite setback for Gastelum. It's kind of like, it kind of feels like the other shoe that dropped after that terrible Tyron Woodley performance, where it was just like, you know, you screwed around and all this stuff is going to catch up with you. And it caught up to him for an uninspired loss against Tyron Woodley, and now it catches up just with, like, you know, other guys in that time that he's been trying to get his weight in check. Other people have been improving, and they've been becoming better fighters.
Yeah, and he's moving backwards. But for Magny, this is his second win in a row, and the second win over a fighter with something of a name after beating Eric Silva. So he's got the momentum that he lost when he got derailed by Demian Maia and just de-pantsed and made to look like a complete amateur by Demian Maia. You know, at least there's a sort of contender bubbling under, although I don't think anybody's just dying to pay for Neil Magny fighting for the welterweight title. But let's go ahead and talk about the co-main. They were definitely planning on a brawl. There was plenty of violence pretty one-sided though, as featherweight Ricardo Lamas dominated Diego Sanchez, unanimous sweep decision, 30-27 all the way across the board. For me, it was pretty sad watching Diego get his calf cut out from under him and just get lit up like that.
Yeah, it was it was a less depressing version of the Scott Jorgensen fight lower on the card
Yes, that was
because
extremely depressing because of the botched reffing and cornering.
yeah, and like Lamas is a much better, more notable fighter than Perez, so Diego Sanchez losing to him is much less sad, and it was a much less gruesome injury, but it still had some of that taste to it. Whereas just like we're watching Diego go out there, soldier on, and like he made it a sloppy brawl. He stayed in the fight, but he was never close to winning it. He was never in
No,
the fight. He was
he was
always the
never
guy
a,
getting beat up the whole way through.
yeah, yeah. He never stunned him. He never dropped him. He was never ahead and around. Uh, didn't get a takedown. I mean, just it's sad to see. And these guys are both 33, but it's not the years, it's the miles. And there have been a lot of
Yeah.
miles put on Diego Sanchez's brain. Lamas, on the other hand, looks as good as ever.
Yeah, he's right in the prime of his career. I mean, we should, by all means, we should be seeing Ricardo Lamas at his best for the next 2 or 3 years. Still, he's a fighter in his prime. He's fighting like it. He may never be the guy that beats Chad Mendes, Jose Aldo, or Conor McGregor, or the very elite of the very elite. But he's a top 5 or featherweight right now.
Yeah, yeah, he is. And I don't see him getting knocked out of that position. Although, as we saw last time against Chad Mendes, there's a serious gap between Ricardo Lamas and the very top of the division.
Yeah.
But Conor McGregor's going to need opponents unless he just jumps right up to lightweight. That's if he beats Jose Aldo, which is, anyone's guess. Aldo, of course, has already beaten Lamas as well. So he's definitely going to be pulling for Conor there because that would be a huge payday for him, too. And then on the third fight on the card, flyweight Henry Cejudo defeated Josia Famaga. One judge had it for Famaga, but to me it looked pretty dominant for Cejudo, although not a thrilling fight.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with me for this fight with Cejudo is that I didn't figure he would finish De Silva, but just beating him is a huge feather in his cap.
Oh yeah,
I thought the scorecard for De Silva was ridiculous, and it sets Cejudo up like he's on the fast track for a shot at Demetrius Johnson. I think even if it wasn't thrilling, they need fresh contenders, and he's the only guy in position.
Yeah, and he's the most sellable fight by far for Mighty Mouse. Although no Mighty Mouse fight is going to be selling much, but Olympic gold medalist, that is a very compelling selling pitch. Youngest Olympic gold medalist ever in wrestling,
Yep.
as a matter of fact. So, he beat the number 3 guy in the division. The only guys ahead of him, Benavidez and Dodson, have both lost to Johnson. So there it is. That's why Johnson was cage side watching the fights. So, it wasn't the most exciting thing, but it was a totally dominant performance over a very tough flyweight. So good performance for Cejudo. And then we had the 2 Ultimate Fighter Latin America Season 2 finales. Definitely the lightweight, which featured Peruvian Enrique Brizola taking a decision over Horacio Gutierrez. That was a more entertaining one of the 2, or at least it was much clearer who won.
It had a lot more talent on offer, even if it was a little, even if it was a grind where Barzola was just hitting takedowns and working top control. They at least looked like they had they both had some solid MMA game components. Montano and Marin were just kind of slogging away at each other,
Yeah,
see if anybody fell over.
And that was welterweights Eric Montano and Enrique Marin, and Montano took a split decision in just a sloppy yuck of a fight that went on forever. And then we're right in the thick of the 8 decisions in a row. And then the opener of the event, lightweight Leandro Silva defeated Efren Escudero 29-28 across the boards. Escudero, I think, had the edge in the first round on most cards. I didn't see the cards, but that's my guess. But I don't know. These guys are not going anywhere.
No, it's just a couple of I mean, there are a couple of lightweight dudes working their way through the middle of the division, and they're
They're not working their way
just
through it. They're working their way around it. They're just
yeah,
sort
they're
of
treading water in the
yeah,
middle of the division, I should say. And
yeah.
Silva's one of those guys where it's maddening because watching that fight, like you still see it. He's a top 10 athlete. Like he is a guy who has the basic power and speed and dynamic ability to be a top 10 fighter, but it's just like because he's been that athlete, he's never really improved. And so he's still hesitant to pull the trigger, doesn't fight to doesn't dominate the way he should. And he won. It was fine, but nothing anybody's going to remember next week.
No, no. And speaking of failing to improve, Efren Escudero, treading water is the right verb for him. Anyway, let's talk about the prelim card. 4 fights on the Fox Sports 1 prelims. Andre Fili got a pretty exciting knockout over Gabriel Benitez. Just whipped his ass, frankly.
Yeah, that I was kind of set up. That was very much a setup fight for Fili to show off. Like they booked him against somebody who basically has the same kind of game but is less athletic. And when you're putting two guys who fight a similar style and one of them's a much better athlete,
somebody's going to get head kicked about 4 times and then beaten up with combinations against the fence. So that was some of the most satisfying action on the card. But again, it happened very, very early in a very long evening. Then you had bantamweight Alejandro Perez TKO Scott Jorgensen with just vicious kicks to the calves that had Jorgensen hobbling and falling down all over the ring for most of the second half of the fight, and the ref should have stopped it much sooner.
Yeah, that was depressing as shit. That's one of those things. I mean, I haven't been interested in seeing Scott Jorgensen fight for a while now.
He hasn't been Scott Jorgensen in some time.
No, and I like him. He's a nice guy. I think he's awesome, and at his best, he's put on some great performances. But before this fight happened, I picked Perez, and I just picked him by really depressing win, and that was what we got.
More depressing than what we saw coming. I was thinking it was going to be head trauma, not crippling the man, and then pounding him around at leisure. But they finally did stop the fight. So, and good performance for Perez. You can't fault him. It wasn't his fault. No. But I really hope Jorgensen calls it a career soon because that was brutal. And then welterweight Bartosz Fabiński started off the chain of decisions, just laying and praying on Hector Urbina for everything it was worth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't fault him for it. He's a grinder.
No, he got the win. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, Anik was joking about asking him, like, oh, are you going to fight for the fans and make it exciting? And he's like, hell no, I want to win. And,
exactly.
Like, he's the kind of guy who will keep getting wins right up until he loses once, and then the UFC will cut him.
Yeah, it's that strategy has a downside as well. So, and then in the headliner of the Fox Sports 1 prelim, although pretty moot point when you have 8 more fights on the or 6 more fights on the Fox Sports 1 main card. But Eric Perez, bantamweight, returned to action after a long layoff and beat Taylor Lapilus by unanimous decision. Although everybody gave Lapilus a round, probably the first round. Is that right? My memory of it. Yeah,
I believe that was it.
Yeah, and Lapilus had an interesting striking style. The southpaw orthodox combination with Lapilus looked like he had a karate base or sideward stance. Perez had a hard time finding the distance for striking, but once he got it on the ground, he was pretty dominant.
Yeah, I mean, it's just too much too soon for Lapilus. Dude's been fighting for no time at all in MMA, and Perez, even though he's still a young fighter, has been a really seasoned vet. This is somebody who has been in the UFC for as long as Lapilus has been a pro.
Yeah.
And he just showed it. I mean, Lapilus made some bad decisions in the second and third round. Dove on some submissions he shouldn't have, tried to hook up some takedowns he wasn't going to get, stuff like that.
And it cost him the fight. But and then let's run through the 3-fight pass card. Michael Braceras defeated Valmer Lazaro by split decision, and that's enough about that. Lightweight Polo Reyes, though, knocked out Cesar Arzmendia in quite a fun fight. 3 minutes 42 seconds of the first round, very fun.
Yeah, that's the upside of having a sloppy brawl. Like that's what you hope for out of a Montano Marin fight
Mhm.
up on the card. Is you want to see if two guys are gonna just wing wild shots at each other. You want to see one of them get put out cold.
Yeah, you want to see him land, and you want to see some head trauma, and that's what Marco Polo Reyes delivered. And then welterweight Alvaro Herrera knocked out Vernon Ramos in 30 seconds of the first round. And I literally have no memory of that fight. It must have been good, 30 seconds. I mean, compared to 8 straight decisions, somehow it's been lost.
Yeah, I mean Ramos, the first combination he landed pretty much uh, hurt
Herrera
Ramos
hurt
or
Ramos.
Herrera. The first combination he landed hurt Ramos and put him down. And the moment he went down, the ref stepped in and stopped it. So I mean, it wasn't even that thrilling. It was just sort of like he's hurt, he's down, ref steps in, and that's it.
Yep. So that was that. And then back to Magny and Gastelum and the headliner. Gastelum, if it was a war, he would have won. He won the fourth round and the fifth round, pretty dominant, but he got outpointed in the first 3 rounds, and so that's how the game is played. Magny built up an early lead and took it to a less than thrilling conclusion. But what can you say? I mean, we're a week out from Holly Holm knocking out Ronda Rousey in one of the most exciting, most popular, most talked about cage fights of the decade. And here we are a week later in Monterrey, Mexico. And next week we'll be in Seoul, South Korea for Vincent Henderson versus Jorge Masvidal in a fight that really doesn't mean that much. I mean, it'd be a fine card filler on a pay-per-view, but as a headliner,
Yeah,
you know.
we are going to this Rousey Holm like shadow is going to. I think it's going to hang heavy for another week, where that's just going to be kind of
And then
the
it's
only thing anyone
Thanksgiving,
can
and
think
that's
think
that.
about.
Yeah. And I'm not doing a 6 round for the Soul card. Are you?
I'm not working any part of that card if I
Yeah.
can help it,
So
because
I'm not sure we'll have a 6 round for you, but we might. We'll scrape the barrel and find somebody willing to
yeah,
talk about that card after it happens. But anyway, that's our show. So give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. Subscribe to MMA Nation on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at TheZaneSimon, at KidNate. Read us on BloodyElbow.com. Final thoughts, Zane?
yeah.
Yeah, that's about it. That's what we got. So, adios, MMA aficionados. Eugene will have Knuckle Up tomorrow. We'll be back with Care Don't Care previews and vivisections for the Soul card. And maybe we'll have a 6 round. Maybe we won't. Anyway, adios, MMA aficionados. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Zane.